the Fan3Cast, dishing out the hottest NASCAR news and views while celebrating the Three's historic comeback. Here are your hosts, Michael Metzger and Jason Schultz.
What a weird and sort of wild Michigan race that we saw yesterday. We're doing the Fan3Cast a little early this week. Someone, me, is going on vacation, so we wanted to make sure that you had your fill of our little podcast here. But Jason, talking about Michigan, we saw Jeff Gordon win for the third time this year, 91st time of his career, and first time since 2001 at Michigan. Side note, I was actually at that race 13 years ago, which was kind of cool to see that history. But what a weird day, because it started off with cautions, and then it became one of the most boring races of the year, and then everyone forgot how to drive near the end, and it was caution crazy and led to a pretty good finish.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the weirder races we've seen, and it just had this different feel than usual, and we've been having that theme a lot lately with the races, just a weird feel we're getting, but Gordon definitely was impressive. He had about 3 chances to beat Logano, couldn't get on the first two. The last one was magic for him. Pulled out to the lead and ended up winning the race, and that is definitely showing how really great and dominant a team's been as of late.
Well, he doesn't have the results to show for it. I've been impressed with Gordon's run the last couple of weeks, especially Watkins Glen, a place that has been not so kind to him, and it, again, wasn't kind because he ran into mechanical problems, but before that, he was actually pretty fast and in contention, so he's starting to figure out all these tracks at once, it seems.
It'll be interesting to see whether or not Gordon makes the Final Four. Homestead, I'm not too sure we're going to see him perform all that well in the chase. I think this is just maybe a little string of success putting together right now. He'll make the chase. He'll be pretty good early on, but by the end of the chase, I don't expect him to be around that much.
I have that feeling that something stupid's going to happen and he'll get eliminated early and then probably pick it right back up, and then we'll just have to play that game of what if. But one person who's probably wondering what if or what is going on with his season is Jimmy Johnson. We saw him leading laps, and then he had a broken shifter. He was able to overcome that with some nifty one-handed driving while trying to put clamps on the shifter. And then he also had a run-in with Ryan Newman, which led to a heated debate between the two and some harsh criticism from Johnson for Newman.
Yeah, that was a very intense conversation. You could see by the look on Johnson's face, just completely serious, and they definitely didn't agree on how they raced each other late in the event. And he said that, like, Johnson has just had the worst luck lately. He had an okay day yesterday. It wasn't the greatest, it wasn't the worst, so he's sort of rebounding a little, but usually when he struggles during the summer months, he comes on really strong by the fall and will be a great contender for the title.
Which that's exactly why you can't give the title to someone like Jeff Gordon or Joey Logano, who had another strong performance, because you just don't know when Johnson's going to kick it into the next gear. And I gotta say, maybe a little biased being a Ryan Newman fan, but I'm pretty sure Jimmy Johnson ran into the side of Newman late in the closing laps, and I'm not sure why Johnson felt like Newman wasn't cutting him any slack considering he got into Newman, but that's just my observation. And as Twitter told me, I don't know anything, so I don't know anything.
A few guys on the chase bubble right now who didn't have the greatest days were Matt Kenseth and Kyle Larson. Kenseth was involved in that early wreck that started when Danica Patrick spun around, and his chance at winning really went out the window very early, and he seems to be a lock for the chase based on points. He's pretty high up there, but I think he'll definitely want to win over the next few weeks. And Larson had troubles from the start with the incident up here with Dale Earnhardt Jr., and then he slams the wall after a tire blow, so his chance at, I think a lot of people expected him to be a contender for the race, but for the win yesterday, but that didn't turn out to be anything, and now Larson's out of the chase grid and probably down to 3 last shots at getting a win or making up some serious points before the cutoff comes.
I'm pretty sure Larson would need a win to get into the chase at this point. This might have sealed his fate, being locked out of it for this year. Kenseth, I agree with you. He's got enough points that he can afford to take these couple of hits, but you just never know if three other drivers are going to rattle off wins here right before we get into the chase. Now, I got to say, with Matt Kenseth's issues, that kind of leads into our next bullet point here. I was very surprised. It didn't seem like there was much damage to his car, and there didn't seem to be much damage to Kyle Busch's car when he hit the wall early in the race, but apparently there was enough to send both of them back to the garage for repairs.
And you can add Kurt Busch to that list, too. He hit the wall, but it did not look that bad. And there must have been some problem when you're really going that fast at Michigan that your car really can't have that much damage to be up to speed and contend like you should without having to go below the minimum speed or just not even be a contender out there.
What's pretty ridiculous for Kyle Busch, and thank goodness that he has a win in his bank, but this 38th place finish this past weekend was his best finish in the last 3 races, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's definitely not the greatest stat right now, but as we've seen with Johnson before, just an awful month of August, an awful summer string of races turns into one heck of a chase performance. And I think Busch, you could probably pencil him in as maybe a guy who could do the same thing, really come out in the chase and surprise everyone after he had such a bad couple of races. But it'll be interesting to see because it'll be the first time we're really going to see if he can rebound from this or just continue struggling throughout the rest of the season.
Now, speaking of Joe Gibbs Racing, they are set for what they've billed an unprecedented announcement on Tuesday, reaching all 3 series. So, what we do kind of know from a few articles out there is that they're probably going to announce that Carl Edwards is joining the team in a 4th Sprint Cup entry next year. I've also heard rumblings that Daniel Suarez will have a nationwide series ride for next year. Once it starts talking about across all 3 series, Jason, what else might they be able to announce on Tuesday?
If it crosses all 3 series like they're saying, I wouldn't be surprised if it had something to do with Bubba Wallace in the truck series, or even maybe they're giving Kyle Busch Motorsports another truck driver to put out there for next season. So it'll be interesting to see, and I think this is a good move by the team because they're getting this big announcement with Edwards and everything out of the way before the chase starts. That would be a huge distractor if there are rumors still going around the garage by the time we're into the chase, and that would just be a bad scenario for them. So this is a great move getting out of the way early, but it's probably one of the most predictable announcements we've had in a long time.
Now, do you think Bubba Wallace is at the point where he can maybe graduate to the Nationwide Series, or does he need a little bit more refinement in the Truck Series?
It's really hard to say. I would say maybe another year in the Truck Series, but I think he's used Toyota as a sponsor for a lot of races, so if he's getting their money's worth for sponsorship if they put Bubba in the Nationwide Series, and his talent level is like really on the edge right now, Trucker Nationwide, but wherever he does, I think he'll be doing pretty well next season.
We come into the power rankings next, Jason. I don't know about you. Well, you couldn't see ahead of time because I didn't have it written down, but mine did not change with the performances over the weekend. Jeff Gordon is still on top. He won, so obviously that kind of helps his statistical base for the power rankings. Brad Keselowski recovered from a blown tire and hitting the wall to still get a top 10. Again, not real much damage done, statistically speaking. And I still have Kevin Harvick up there, who scored yet another top 5 finish. Finished second to Jeff Gordon, which I believe was his 4th consecutive second-place finish at Michigan.
Mine did not change much either. I just did a little switching around. I still have Dale Earnhardt Jr. on top of mine. 5th place finish. He's just been so consistent, and I said that every time I've talked about him on top of my power rankings. He's just been very consistent. Just keeps on knocking off these great finishes, and I think he's trying to turn into a really good championship contender, and I think you'll definitely see him be a factor once the chase gets rolling. And I put Jeff Gordon in second. He's done pretty well the last few weeks as well. And I put down up there who would have won the race if it had been for those 3 or 4 restarts at the end of the race. And I know he'll he's been doing well lately. And Bristol, I think he's going to have a surprising performance because he's not typically the best Bristol performer, but I feel like it's his time to shine at Thunder Valley next weekend.
Speaking of Thunder Valley and Joey Logano, he is our most recent short track winner in the Cup Series, picking up the win at Richmond earlier in the year. Like you said, they are going to the last great Coliseum of the Bristol Motor Speedway. Under the lights, high action, high drama. You know there's going to be tempers flaring, but with the rule change coming down that drivers need to stay in their vehicles unless there's fire or something else going on with their car, we might not see the same tempers flaring that we would normally see, or maybe people would take it to the garage. How much impact do you think this will have on the Bristol race itself?
I don't see it having much of an impact. If drivers are angry with each other, they're going to take it out after the race in the garage area. So I think you'll definitely see the Bristol temper still come through, and they may not display their anger on the racetrack, but in the garage area, I think it's definitely going to be a busy place once the race concludes on Saturday night.
It'll be interesting to see if tempers do play into the race itself. Maybe a driver who's on the edge, maybe they take a little bit more of a risk or ride a little dirty out there, so to speak, to try to get in positioning to get into the chase. Now, Jason, I rattled off those three names, Kenseth, Larson, and Kane. There's a bunch of other drivers who haven't scored a win yet to get into the chase, but can those three get the win this weekend to get into the chase, do you think?
I think they'll definitely be one of those three. They're three of the best Bristol racers right now, and it's Kenseth's time to shine. He's got to either do really well this weekend or everyone's pretty much going to write him off as a championship contender, because this is a race where he can do really well. He won here last year, and it's just his type of race, and he's got to perform well. And for Kane, this is a really good track for him, and he definitely needs that win. And looking at the last three races of the regular season, this might be his best shot. Then with Larson, he has become sort of a Bristol master. He almost beat Kyle Busch in the H1 Series event at his first ever Bristol race last March. So he's definitely shown his strength on the track. And I think this is probably the greatest chance we'll see of a first-time winner this season coming through. And those three have to play some strategy games because they definitely need to get the win on one of their best tracks.
At Michigan, it was Greg Biffle who had all the pressure. Everyone said, being a four-time winner, that this was his last good chance to get into the chase. He managed a top 10 finish, but it was definitely not the win that he needed. I think the same thing's going to happen to these three drivers and anyone else trying to get that first win. I think the pressure is going to be just a little bit too much. Maybe they make a mistake. Maybe they just come in a little too cocky for their own good, maybe thinking that they're a lot better than they are off. And I don't know. At this juncture, I just see the likes of the Penske with Keselowski and Logano. You have Jeff Gordon. Even Dale Earnhardt Jr., I wouldn't be surprised picking up another win. So I think the top teams are starting to hit it into that extra gear, and that's going to be a kind of a detriment to these teams on the fringe. Now, speaking of Jeff Gordon, can he continue this little hot streak that he has? So he won at Indianapolis. He was in contention at Pocono and Watkins Glen before issues. And then we have him winning at Michigan. So he seems to, like we started the show off, hitting it into the next gear. But can Bristol, a place that he has won 5 times, continue that hot streak?
What he's been proving with the wins at Michigan and Indy is the tracks that he did win at a long time, many years ago. And he's coming back and performing really strong on these tracks. And Bristol can fall into that category too. So I think he'll definitely be competitive and up front. I don't think he'll be able to be as good as he was at Michigan. He'll probably have a decent top 10 run throughout the night.
Now, this race is called the Irwin Tools Night Race. It's one of the very few races that we have where there is no mileage in the name of the race, such as the pure Michigan 400 we saw last weekend. Jason, in your opinion, is it weird not having the mileage in there, or it honestly doesn't matter what they call these races?
It's pretty weird to hear the race without, 500 miles, 400 miles, 300 miles. And you look at Bristol, they've done this for the last few years, and I think they could use easily called the Irwin Tools 500. I think that sounds a lot better than the Irwin Tools Night Race. And some of my favorite races from, when I first started watching were the Bristol Night Race. It's like the Sharpie 500, which I thought was an awesome name. And 500 miles, I like seeing that tagged onto race names, but it's interesting. But when it comes down to it, doesn't really make too big of an impact whether it has mileage on there or not.
I think race names in general are getting a little weird out there. You have the Camping World RV Sales 301 you just had, which is odd 301. You have the Aaron's 499, which is odd because it's 500 miles. You have races like this where they don't have the mileage in there, but then you have like the Brickyard that we debated a couple weeks ago where it's like a 50 million character name to the race. I don't know. In the end, maybe it's just easier just to go with the tracks as opposed to the race names because they change so often and things don't always stay the same.
And this will lead us into our picks for the Irwin Tools Night Race at Bristol. I'm going to go with Matt Kenseth. I just think it's finally his time to get back to the victory lane. He's been struggling all season long and just been off his game compared to what he did last year. And he's won really well at Bristol in the past. He can win here. He's proven that. And I just think it's his turn to get his win, lock himself into the chase, and start focusing on his chance at winning the championship once the final 10 races arrive.
I am going with Jeff Gordon. Apparently I hate Gordon and his fans because I picked him at Pocono and Watkins Glen. He had issues. I didn't pick him at Michigan. He wins the race. So I'm going to try picking him again here at Bristol. I mentioned earlier he has 5 wins. There's 16 top 5s in his career, 24 top 10s and 43 starts, and a 12.16 average finish. I'm thinking he's starting to hit these tracks that, like you said, Jason, he was good at in the past. Now he seems to kind of found his mojo once again with Alan Gustafson calling the shots on the pit box. So I look for him to continue to make statements and basically shut critics up that he ain't going anywhere anytime soon.
The Bristol Night Race is always one of the best races of the season. The action will definitely be present on Saturday night, and I'm just looking forward to it. It'll be the first time I'm getting to watch the race from home on TV since 2011, and I've always loved the atmosphere that surrounds the race to start off before it even starts, with the pre-race show and everything. And it's going to be one awesome night.
It's always a great show at Bristol under the lights. I can't wait as well, Jason. It should be another great Sprint Cup Series race.
Thanks for listening to the Fan3Cast. For more NASCAR coverage, check out StartingParkBlog.com and Turn4RacingNews.com. Follow along on Twitter at Fan3Cast, at StartingParkBlog, and at NASCAR Jason.